Welcome to the Friday Council, a podcast exploring modern life and the human condition. Join us each week for a new conversation. This is the Friday Council. Welcome back to the Friday Council podcast, episode 39 today. Start of a long weekend for those who are working. It's great.
Those are working regular jobs.
Yes, anyway. That's right. How are you doing, Daniel?
Good. I just want to say every single statement I make today is a representation of Shirley Boys High School. It's an official statement of Shirley Boys High School, so I'm going to be extra racist today.
Is that under 18? No, under 15B
under 15B
rugby.
B Shirley rugby team.
Damn, it's impressive. You still fits you.
I didn't play. I copped it at the end when I was in year 13. As I was leaving, they were selling them for like $10, and I was like, "That's a great moment. They're real good quality."
Yeah, that's a proper
quality.
Rugby shirt. Yeah. Like those are the old school ones.
What number am I?
14.
Is that a good one?
It's right wing, left wing.
One of the wings.
It's a winger.
Yeah.
Anyway, how you, David?
Yeah, not too bad.
Doing well.
Reasonably good.
Yeah.
All right, Nav, you can hit us off with the topic today because it was your idea.
Yeah, so earlier in the week, we just came together in the group chat and we thought we would talk about mental health, particularly with men, and the stigma behind not being able to share your feelings. So it's kind of like an open-ended question. Why do we find it so hard to talk about our feelings? Although I would say now, this period of time that we live in is probably one of the, like it's more widely accepted to be able to share your feelings, and the stigma seems to be dropping, but I wouldn't say it's perfect. Would you guys say?
That's when you mentioned that, I instantly think of comparing it to like where we are, because that has been in the general public's mind for many years now. And so it's kind of like a review almost. I'm kind of reflecting back now, going, have we made strides? Is it doing well, or is it even enough? I think is a question that we could maybe start to be contemplating, whether we're good, and or not. Do you disagree?
Yeah, or definitely not.
Yeah, I'm not saying we are there, but I'm saying it's good. I say we're pretty much there.
I don't think it's pretty much there. I think we're maybe like halfway there.
Okay.
Maybe even a third or a quarter. It's better. Yeah, it's the best it's ever been, but that's starting from rock bottom in terms of, being able to talk about these things. So I feel like we're in this position where it's advertised on TV that it's okay to talk about your feelings and stuff like that. So if we were to take what's in the news and on the TV ads, it's perfect. You'd think it's perfect because there's enough significant people out there advertising, like John Kerwin has been doing it for years, Mike King, big figures talking about these things and other things, more serious things like suicide. But there's this weird thing below the surface where even though we can watch those ads and read the news, most men, or certainly a lot of men, still don't feel comfortable, even though they know that it's meant to be acceptable. It's still very hard. And I'm in that position, or was in that position until a year or two ago, where I read about that it's okay to admit that you're not okay and stuff like that, but I couldn't bring myself to do it, even though I read that it's okay to say that. Still very hard to do. Very, very hard to do. So, yeah.
I think just from that, I think the probably one of the big underlying key things is also if you have the actual opportunity to talk to someone that you trust. So I'm not talking for you, but I think you and I are probably similar, where if we had any issues or things that were hard to deal with or bring up, it wasn't easy to go to our parents or siblings. Whereas I know, like, I've had some friends where family dynamics, like any issues, any problems, like it was encouraged by the parents to go and talk to them, see how you're doing. So yeah, I guess that's probably a good point to make, but I don't know. What about you, Daniel?
Well, what maybe a distinction first? Are we talking about? Well, I suppose we're talking about it all, but is it talking about emotions and feelings or mental health? Because I feel like that's very similar in the same umbrella, but they're kind of different.
I'd say starting off probably emotions and feelings.
Okay.
Because mental health, I guess, as a topic, can be such like a wide umbrella. But I think when you're starting surface level, generally it's your thoughts and your feelings, and then, I mean, depending on your situation, there may be some more underlying things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking it more from mental health, but I see that angle as well. But yeah, they are closely linked, but yes, slightly different. I still think that, so if we're just talking about like feelings and saying that, I don't know, that you're nervous.
I'm really stressed out today.
Yeah. So it's not that you have a clinical or a chronic condition. It's just, you're anxious about a specific thing. I still don't, that's still iffy. Or even if it's like, well, this is a classic one, and I'll take it back to high school. Like if you liked a girl, and you told your friends about it, you get like hazed for it. And there's that can be okay to an extent, but there's a weird sort of bit where it's kind of acceptable if you were using a girl, if you were having sex with her, but not to love her. Like that's weird. That's being a pussy.
Yeah,
that's not right. It's not. And part of that was just being a teenager. It's not like that as an adult, but still it can be a little bit iffy. Just being like, wow, I really love this girl, or I really like this girl, or something like that. Yeah, it's still not as straightforward as it should be. For men anyway, I think for women it's a little bit better. I think women are a bit more naturally inclined to talk about their feelings, and there's definitely no stigma attached. Like it's acceptable for women to cry, even cry, right? In a movie, or in any situation, no one thinks anything of women crying, but some people probably think something of men crying, and certainly just me personally still have this internal feeling that it's not acceptable to cry in a public space anyway, where I can be seen. So, and that could just be something like I was at a funeral a month or so ago, and I had the urge to cry, but there was something inside me that said I can't cry around all these people. So
okay, so I want to try and make this point as concisely as possible. When you mentioned crying in a movie theater, and how we were just talking about the difference between feelings and emotions and mental health, where it's all the same thing, but it's kind of not in the same way. And we've talked a few days ago, David, about an example of like an adult man. I think anyone can relate to this. An adult male, or adult woman, more lenient to be more emotional, but adult man who completely loses his cool and is like going crazy about like something small, and he's just snapped, and it's like cringe to see like a fully grown man having a tantrum. Basically, he's lost control of his emotions, and you see before the podcast that's a different thing. Losing control of your emotions and being cringe in that way, and I think rightly so, that should be seen as cringe. Like a man who can't control his emotions that's not a masculine trait. Whereas talking about your feelings and emotions and mental health is a completely different issue. And so you mentioned crying at the movies. If you're a man and you're crying at the movies, that can be read two ways. It can be read my potentially more cynical way of this guy can't control his emotions, or it could be read as this guy's really comfortable in himself and can let out and cry. And I think, you have something to add?
Yeah. So it's very contextual, isn't it? If it's a man crying about a Disney movie, a Marvel movie, that's probably a bit icky, although I'm not to judge. But if it's the Titanic or something, that's, I think, is more acceptable, because I mean, I've watched movies, I can't think of one off the top of my head where I have the urge to cry, and I do cry from watching it in my bedroom alone. That's not me losing control. That's just me expressing a very real human emotion. So yes, I can hold back and not cry, but I don't
Why?
think, huh?
But like, why's the point, you know? Especially
Because
if you're
it's
on your own. Like, why would you
no,
hold
so I
back?
won't if I'm alone, but I wouldn't cry if I was at a movie with you two because I wouldn't feel that that's socially acceptable. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Is that part of the trajectory though? Do you think that's, because it's very broad, like the mental health stigma? I think a lot of people, chop and change between, I don't want to talk about my feelings, but then talking about mental health is a different issue. I think it's all lumped into one. And do you think that's something that we should be aiming for as well, where that feeling, which I feel as well, where you don't want to cry in front of your other guy friends or even other certain female friends, is that a bad feeling in general, do you think? That should be part of the movement to get rid of completely?
As in that it should be acceptable to do it?
It should be acceptable
Yes,
to do it.
it should be acceptable
You
to do
think
it.
so?
Yes, yeah. Unless, as I say, although as I say, it's not, everyone's different, but yeah, if you're crying about like a cartoon movie, I'd find that a little bit icky, but as I say, I can't really judge anyone, you know. Like I've watched Dragon Ball Z, makes me emotional. Doesn't make me feel like crying, but there's bits in it. So yeah, I shouldn't judge anyone. But if it's like something that represents a very like real human experience, like someone dying in a movie, yeah, it invokes a real human emotion in you. I don't think there should be an issue with expressing that, whether you're male or female. But yeah, personally, I do feel that way because obviously it's been something that's deeply ingrained in me, whether it's my parents, school, society, I don't know what.
Yeah. I just want to say I'm probably similar to David in the fact that there's been times where you almost know like you feel you need to cry or to like shed a tear because not because it's like the right thing to do. So like at a funeral, obviously if this person's close to you or like it genuinely affects you, and there's like a stirring up inside, but for whatever reason I've been in the position where it's like I just like I can't cry, or like there's something stopping you from doing it, whether it's like, oh, people will see me, but then if anything, it is probably one of the safest places or more socially acceptable place to do it. So it's kind of like a cycle. It just keeps like back and forth. But I had this thought, and it's probably based on a book which I read a couple of years ago. The book was called Battle Cry, Waging the War Within. I think that something like this. I'll find the title. But basically, one of the quotes was talking about how there's two popular phrases or mantras that we prescribed in society. Is one of them, real men don't cry, and the other one being I've got it here. Where is it? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think, although they're quite cliche, over time it's like ingrained in society. It's like it's just not right for men to cry, or you need to be strong.
Yeah.
Particularly when it comes to like a family dynamic. Generally, as a male, traditionally in that sense, we've been told like we're the protectors, we're the ones who provide for the family, but often that can be overwhelming for people, and it just can be quite difficult. So yeah, I don't know the answer, but I think taking a step towards the avenue of it is okay like to share, and I think it probably starts with having like close friends or just
guy friends.
guy
specifically,
friends.
Do you think?
I think like I mean not I'm not sure about everybody, but often having like close group of friends was easier in high school because you were around people all the time. You were forced into it. But when you're running the own march of life, it's like sometimes you've actually got to put effort in to keep relationships and to keep growing and to be open with each other. So I think it's an important step, and often it can be hard to just bring it up with friends because it comes back to that whole hazing thing.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you don't, we're here to drink and have a good time, not share how you're feeling. I don't care. You miss your problems with your missus, stay at home.
That reeks of like one could be jealousy of other guys when you're talking as in a high school situation of a girl that you have feelings for, and also like unsure, just like completely unsure how to react. So you haze, you bully is like a very natural thing to do, especially because everyone's like, no one really knows what they're doing with girls, especially around that age. So it's easier to just instead of be serious about it with your friend and potentially embarrass yourself in front of the other guys who can't handle it. It's easier to just haze. I want to make a point. You mentioned that men typically seen as the providers and the like stability. I think there's a bit of a cognitive dissonance between what society and what specifically women say they want and what they actually like. I've got an article here. Let me fluff the paper.
Nice.
It sounds super epic and important. That this is from a Canadian. It says it's like nationalglobalnews.ca, which sounds a bit tabloidy, but they have some direct quotes in here, which are quite nice. This is a survey by Elite Singles. See that 95% of women say that they prefer a man who is open about his emotions, and 97%, so basically all of them, 97% say that they can find men crying is considered either strong, natural, or healthy. And so, like you said before as well, it's contextual. I think, so men, I'll read another quote to further my point, actually. So this is from a relationship expert, whatever that may mean, Chantal Hyde. She says, quote, men have been conditioned to not only hide their feelings, but to then cover up how much they're covering up their feelings, she says. All this leads to profoundly sad statistics that men will suffer more depression, alcohol and drug addiction, and suicide rates than women because they don't feel comfortable opening up and letting it all out. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think it could be that we feel all right opening up to certain close friends, but that there's a cognitive distance where women, for example, still prefer men who earn more than them, say. So there's an expectation that you're going to earn more, and all the stresses that typically come with earning more money and higher positions of power. And so no matter how open you are, it's still unfair in that respect. You've still got a higher load to carry in that respect. So it may not be the fact that we're not opening up enough. It may be just that society and biology even is stacked against men in that respect, where it's just like stressful. Like I can talk about my feelings as much as I like, that I'm stressed about my work, but at the end of the day, you're still naturally attracted to me because I'm earning more than you. And that's a fact as well, that women prefer men.
Yeah, I don't understand what that's got to do with anything.
Well, I'm saying the solution we might keep progressing with men talking about their feelings, and the suicide rates and drug addiction in men might not decrease. It might not be related, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it might be just like a biological and societal structure of that men are expected to earn more. I think it might make more sense. I think it might be the same thing with like the trans kids debate, where the suicide rate is about the same before and after, post-op, pre-op. And they say it's because like they're not accepted in society. Society isn't accepting of them. So I don't think that might be the issue. There might be other issues there that are causing them to want to transition in the first place. So no matter how much you readjust society to be more inclusive and open about feelings and diversity and stuff, it might not be fixing the actual issue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Somewhat devil's advocate, but I think
I see what you're saying, and there's probably some truth in it, but equally, for those that do open up with it, if they find a solution, then it can be solved. Even if work is causing their stress and they open up about their struggles with work, they might be able to change position within the job, or have something that can essentially reduce the stressor. But if you never talk about it because you feel embarrassed about it, then there's virtually no chance. You're just hoping that it will go away and fix it by itself, which sometimes it does, but it's probably better odds if you talk about it. And yes, if the problem is that serious, talking about it might not fix it, but for some it certainly will. I think it will certainly reduce or improve the ratio of people struggling. Some will find an answer to their issues. Others won't. It's like if we take a severely depressed person, a suicidal person, some can get all the help in the world, psychiatrists, medications, therapy, and they still end up killing themselves. So yes, some people, it won't work. It's that severe, but there'll be some that it will work. And there'll be some people out there now, in fact, there'll be a lot of people who are dead now from suicide that had an avenue been open, they wouldn't have killed themselves. Yeah, so
No
it will
doubt.
definitely help some,
Yes.
which is better than none.
I think we can all probably agree though that higher paying jobs generally, very generally, is more responsibility, like more stress, like more stressful job. So if it was just, if that was gonna, talking about the feelings and then saying, oh, well, I'm looking to kind of hits a bit close to home. I'm looking like, I'll just work 2 days a week, babe. You be the breadwinner. You keep working your like mid pay job, and I'll just drop down to like 2 days a week, and I'll just be earning less money. But it's a bit like I need that. No matter how much I talk about my mental health, that's the problem. That's not the opening about mental health. So that might be why men find it easier to confide in other men, because they relate to that pressure that is being perpetuated by society, maybe, and women themselves. Not saying that's a bad thing. It's just,
Yeah. So it doesn't matter who they're opening up to, whether it's their partner or their men, as long as they find the right person. It could be their partner, it could be a work colleague, it could be their friend, or it could be a psychiatrist. So I think you're going specifically for a male talking to a female, their partner. Is that what you're saying? And that might not work.
Oh yeah, well I'm saying like you, yeah, I'm agreeing that it could be they could talk to anyone, but talking might not fix the issue that women still expect men in general to earn more than them.
But that's a very
pressure.
specific. That's a very specific thing that you're detailing anyway. We're talking about men talking about their feelings in general, not men who are stressed about their job and men who are forced to earn more.
Yeah,
that's a very specific detail that you're.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's
so
true.
so it could be something completely different.
Yeah, like in general. Would you guys also agree that? I mean, it mentions something like, okay, I'll quote from here again. Where is it? Many men who work hard to be the providers of their households will shelve emotions in order to get the job done. Their number one focus is ensuring that their family has security, and that anything that would get in the way of functioning at a high level, or like a high paying job, for example, on a daily basis is put aside until it's more convenient. So not only, I think, men are expected to earn more, they're also expected to like represent the like stability, and they're expected to represent that. And I think even though like basically all the women surveyed said they're like, yeah, I like a man to cry and whatnot. I'm just saying opening up might not be, my main point is that opening up and talking might not fix some of the issues we're expecting it to fix.
No, it might not.
Yeah,
it might not. No one's saying that it's the perfect solution to end all of men's problems.
No,
but it will help some.
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying there's no harm in it.
No,
right?
In most cases there won't be any harm. And also, if we're talking again, I think still it's a very specific issue. But yeah, man, has to be the rock or whatever. So that's where I think we need to change this thinking. Unless he is throwing a temper tantrum, completely losing his mind, having a breakdown, crying, rolling around all over the floor, completely out of control, crying or just opening up, saying that you're struggling, doesn't mean that you're not in control.
No,
so I think
like you said, the movies, yes. you could choose to not cry.
So we need to change that thinking. And I've given 2 examples recently, like of an All Black who's talked about his struggles with anxiety, and I've talked about Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and his not current but previous battles with depression. Those are 2 of the strongest people in the world. One is literally The Rock, and and they have these struggles. And I don't know whether they're work related or not, but I don't view them and look, wow, he's out of control. He's not a man anymore. So I think we need to change that thinking that talking about your feelings, just opening up, crying, whatever it is, doesn't mean that you're no longer a man and that you're now weak.
Yeah. Also, on top of that, I think the point you made about men generally having to earn more than women, like it's seen in society as like, particularly if you're looking for a mate, right? Like, like it's woman. I'm assuming is confidence is a big one, and like earning a high wage or being able to provide. So even though you may earn promotion after promotion, or you're progressing in your career, that won't necessarily fix all the problems, because if the underlying issue is still there, then I think it's pretty redundant. It's pretty useless. So, I guess what I'm trying to say, another thing to bring up from what you've said, you might not be able to talk to specific people about specific things. Say, like, for example, I might be able to talk to you guys about, I don't know, my wife or relationship, but then it's not as easy for me to talk to her about our relationship. Like, sometimes you might feel like you can't be honest, but that's a sub you should be, if you're in a relationship.
I relate.
Yeah, but I think often it will also just come down to needing like a fresh perspective on things. So if we're using the example of like if work's stressing you out, well, it might not actually be as bad as it is. You're probably just thinking it's bad because you're experiencing that, and having someone that you trust and having someone who can just give a fresh perspective who's not actually involved might be beneficial. Might not be either, but I think making a habit too of trying to, like, I say, schedule time to talk. So like in a relationship, I think Jordan Peterson made an example. Him and his wife at dinner time is the time, no TVs, no distraction. You sit down, you eat, and you talk about life, because if you're going to be living with your partner or your wife, whatever, for the next 20, 30 years, well, you got to make sure that you're going in the same direction with the same goals. Otherwise, it's going to be terrible, or it's going to be hell over time. So I think, it's a habitual thing. And so for me, like, there'll be times where I won't be able to see my wife because she works different hours for like 3-4 days at a time, unless, it's just when she comes home, but I'm usually asleep. So scheduling time, like we'll go out for a coffee or for a walk, and just being open and sharing what's going on in your life or your job.
Your brain.
Yeah, your brain, like, are the things that you're thinking about there. That you're struggling with, or things that it can be. It's not necessarily, it has to be the bad things in life. Like, you also need to rejoice in the good things that are going on. But just being able to, like, be open and share your feelings it's very cathartic. And often it might even just be like you need to see a professional. You might, just to get perspective of experiences or trauma that you've gone through, or things that for whatever reason it just keep popping up in your head and you just don't know how to deal with. But yeah, it's I guess just taking that step and trying to find the right person or friends or family member, professional. Yeah.
I just want to use like two examples, one a real example and one a stereotype. If we think of a stereotype of gay men, we tend to think of them being much more open and comfortable, expressing themselves, don't we? I know it's a stereotype.
Woman-like, really, like you would say, whether that's the right way to say it or not.
So
More womanly.
they're able to tap into their feminine traits.
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah. And have you ever noticed that? And then again, it's a stereotype, but women tend to love gay guys.
Mm-hmm.
They think
gay best friend is the stereotype.
They think they're the shit.
Yeah.
They think they're the shit. So
that's a good point.
That's an example of someone who's essentially, and again, as I say, I know it's a stereotype, but there is some truth to it. They're comfortable expressing themselves, and women are very drawn towards that. Yes, it's only in a friendly way, but they don't think they're any less of a man. And then a real example. I won't say who they are, but I know someone who's quite close to me who doesn't express because he can't express his emotions, and I don't know how to describe it, but I look at him and I think he's got issues. Right. The fact that he can't reveal, that he puts on an act that he's got everything
And
together.
it's quite obvious to you, is it?
It's quite obvious. It's quite obvious to me, and there'll be other examples. We probably all met someone who's like that. They put on the old school macho man, but you can see that they've got issues.
Yeah, or
I know.
perhaps even like everything ends in like a joke, sort of. Yeah, like
It could even be
If it
that.
starts getting too serious, they like make joke
Oh,
of
nah,
things.
yeah,
I'm kind of
yeah.
like that, to be honest, as well.
Well,
a little
yeah.
bit. But yeah.
Context again, but yeah, and I don't think a woman would be drawn towards that because so it's not the greatest way to explain it. It makes sense in my head, but yeah, if a guy essentially can't tap into what's going on below the surface and he just acts like the man all the time, and you can't really get far.
That's a good point. It
Yeah.
makes you think, like, say for example, like a family member dying and it doesn't affect you, and you're just pure stoic, like, oh well, we march on with life. I think you might be right. As a woman may see that as well, when inevitably, like, my parent will pass away or whatever. How do I know that you're going to be able to support, because you don't actually know how it feels? You're just a macho man. Like, women probably want someone, and according to that article, who can relate to them, and I guess they can confide and share their feelings with, and feel trusted in a safe space. So, maybe it's a muscle that we need to train, is just to have a good cry now and again or something.
Maybe a better example is we think it's a stereotype. Yeah, so if we think of a stereotype of a gangster rapper, that's what I would say. They embody. They're always strong. They never cry. They never show weakness. But they never really talk about their feelings, do they? And they never talk about anything real. Now, yes, I guess you can argue that the stereotype is that women are attracted to them, but are they long-term healthy relationships? Is that the stereotype of a gang? No, it's unhealthy, it's violence, and just, not deep relationships. So that's that example of someone who acts like nothing ever gets to them. But it's very surface level. You can't get very far.
That's a good point.
It's like you're permanently an acquaintance.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, so 2 points I want to say. So like long term, maybe there's sexual attraction to that macho masculine, and potentially you don't even realize that it's a front until you get to know them better. Like the person you're referencing, I don't know who you're talking about, but you probably know them well enough. Obviously, so you can tell it's a front.
Yeah.
But also when you're talking about the gay man stereotype, like you see, like, women don't see them as any less of a man. Sure, I agree, but they're definitely not they're usually not sexually attracted to it. So, I suppose that's a lot of what my point was leaning on, which was kind of irrelevant, to be honest, to the point that it's like that sexual attraction is missing in that gay relationship, and then it's the opposite. The sexual attraction's all there for a masculine macho guy, but but they can't relate to him. It's not going to be long term. So might come back to a balance. Yeah.
So maybe a better stereotype then, and again, I don't know. I think there's some truth to it again, but it's still a stereotype. Is French men. What is the stereotype of French men? They're very feminine in a similar way.
Romantic.
They're very romantic, and they're not afraid to cry. That would be a part of the stereotype. They're in very touch with their emotions, and they're not afraid to display it. And there's a rumor out there, there's a stereotype that women love French men because they're not afraid to reveal themselves and talk about
Yeah, I think that's kind of like a fantasy. It's obviously a stereotype, also kind of like a caricature where they kind of long. I think maybe in a society that we live in, where guys in general don't talk about their feelings as much as they probably should, that like creates this like stereotype longing that all like middle-aged women are like, oh my god, what I'd give for a man who's so super sensitive. And kind of relating to my point, I think they might think they want that, but really they want something in the middle, like something somewhat in the middle, to balance the sexual attraction and the like deep emotional connection. You
still need, in some aspects, and obviously it's contextual, you still need to have strength and resilience in tough times, like
as a man.
Like
that's my point.
like if you got kids, you don't want to shelter them to think you can't be open, you can't share how you're feeling, and you've got to be strong all the time. But there may be times like, I don't know, like the earthquakes, for example, we experience. Generally, if your family or friends that are in distress, like often, and I guess there was the example with we had like the mosque shooting. You need to look to like someone of leadership who can remain calm in those situations, especially crisis, and who can be like level-headed. But it is, I guess, it's a balance,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I think and I know the point you're making, and that would be like my first instinct is to think of it that way as well. But that's where I think we need to have a paradigm shift and realize that showing emotion and showing, again, come back to my favorite word, showing, being vulnerable doesn't necessarily mean that you're showing weakness or that you're no longer in control. I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but I'm sure you can find an example of a leader who is essentially being vulnerable, crying in the midst of showing strong leadership. Might be, as I say, I can't think of a great example off the top of my head, but there will be an example of someone who's shedding a tear. Or maybe it's not the best example, but you see men crying when they're singing the national anthem. Well, that's essentially they're showing strength because they're about to play sports, right? Especially rugby, but they're being vulnerable. They're crying, but they're also showing strength because nobody's looking at the All Blacks and saying these guys are no longer in control because they're shedding a tear during the national anthem. And there'll be better examples of that, but yeah. It can be. If you're having a full-blown meltdown, you can be out of control and being weak. Yes. But you can also be vulnerable and be strong at the same time.
Yes. Yeah, I suppose it's very contextual, and that, like you're saying, the context of a rugby game, it's like admirable. And I think there's like like in a rugby game, obviously they're not like bawling their eyes out, like occasionally, like if they win something like a World Cup, they can be like bawling their eyes out, and that's when they've lost control, and that's not a bad thing, and it's like just pouring out. But I think when it's very subtle, and you can see when a guy is maybe crying, but like still holding it down. Yeah. Like there's a lot more emotion in there. You can just tell. I don't think you could ever say why exactly. And so when there's like a full-grown man having a tantrum, when he's just gone zero, he's got no control left. That's cringe. When a guy's maybe shedding a quiet tear watching a movie, I think that's like the perfect balance of like attractiveness or healthiness, basically, for like a healthy masculine feminine balance where the emotion in you is more than what you're showing out. So there's some level of control, but yeah, like a balance. There's some like you're fine letting it out. You're not worried about who sees you, but you just like keeping control and composed. I also just wanted to say, or make the point that finishing off this kind of almost tangent of mine, I just don't see much or any conversation about, or the vibe is that just the more open we are, the better, and the more we talk about it as men specifically, our feelings and emotions, just the better things we'll get, and we'll see the suicide, like it's almost as if we're expecting the suicide rate and the drug abuse and whatnot to go down. And I just don't think there's any, well, I think, there's plenty of low-hanging fruit still to go, but it's possible that that's kind of misguided and that there's other issues that we're completely ignoring that maybe biological, maybe it's not going to be able to be a paradigm shift. Maybe it's just built in, like women find men that are slightly taller than them in height like attractive, and you can't change that. Just because you're a short man doesn't make you any less of a man, but it's just like built in the same way maybe that crying, I also think,
you know what I'm saying? I see what you're saying, but I still, for starters, I think we've covered base that you can show emotion and still be attractive to a woman. Yes, there's a balance and all of that. But we're also still just like looking at it through this very specific lens of the way a woman is viewing a man. There's a lot more to life than trying to be attracted to a female. So this goes way deeper than that.
But even within men to men, if there's someone's bawling their eyes out, other men are going to be like, cringe, like that's not manly, like you're embarrassing yourself.
Yeah,
So it's not just women to men.
Yeah, so I think you can be bawling your eyes out and still it's like so after losing a rugby match or winning the World Cup, there is bawling eyes out, but they're not completely out of control.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can.
It's balance.
Yeah,
Whereas,
it's about. I think. I can't like think of an example of like what out of control is, but if. Yeah.
Well, it's like when guys drink and they get like insanely aggressive, and that's like, to me, that's out of control. And I think we'd all agree that's pretty cringe.
Or maybe
it's
an
not
example-
masculine.
Yes.
They're being very physically powerful, but it's not masculine.
Maybe an example of being in control, out of control, is that you can be bawling your eyes out, but if you can stop when you need to and then move forward. When you're out of control, you can't. You've fixated in it. If someone, if you're bawling your eyes out and someone comes up to you and say it's time to go back to the changing rooms now, if you're in control, you can do that. If you're out of control, you might just start flailing.
Get off me!
Yeah. That's out of control.
Yeah, I see
So
what you
if you're in control, you can still be showing more than just a dribble. You can be bawling your eyes out, but then you can say, okay, it's time to change direction now, move on, move away, whatever it is, leave the situation. So I think that might be, an example. But you also, mentioned, you can be out of control and showing what is macho or traditionally considered macho and be equally as pathetic, more pathetic, if anything.
Yes.
Like someone who's out of control of anger. This is probably the most unattractive thing in the world as a man.
I don't know if you've seen it. Like, I remember
Agree, 100%.
working in retail jobs where like families would be out together and you'd see like the wife or whatever looking at products and them, no, come on, we don't need it, we're not buying this, and you just, it's like such a cringe thing because there's way better ways of dealing with that. Like, oh, no, we don't. Maybe we don't need this. Like we've already got one of them, but they're like, no, you're spending too much money. You're doing this, or yelling and telling off your kids in public. Like I get and I understand, like
screaming.
Yeah, and I understand kids and maybe pets as well. If you're out in public, can misbehave, but like getting frustrated and showing anger is, it's not pleasant to see.
But then. I agree. Like a parent, man or woman, screaming. It's like you said before. They can't they're fixated on it, and it's lost. There's no brain capacity. Just even a small amount going towards like, hey, I'm in a social situation. This is like embarrassing. But going for the just talking about or expressing our emotions more. I mean, it's not a healthy way to express it, but could it be argued that we should be much more and not find that cringe and be like, well, they've obviously had a massive week, like kids are crazy enough. Like it's understandable, and we can all agree that we can see why they'll be screaming at their kids in a store. Like, obviously that it's not the first thing the kids have done today or this week and are sleep deprived and blah blah blah, but we still kind of socially expect them to hold their cool. Is that correct, do you think?
Well,
morally?
No, maybe it's not. Maybe we should be more sympathetic. Within reason, again, it's going to completely depend on the context. And does this happen every other day? Or is this like a once in a blue moon sort of thing? It's still, I think we're going to find it unattractive no matter what. And I don't mean that sexually, just unattractive. And that's not like nice behavior. Wouldn't want to be around that person. But yes, in many cases, we should still be more sympathetic, and perhaps I think the inclination is to dig our heels in and sort of mock them or turn away. If someone actually came up and gave them a hug, might snap them out of it. They might be like, oh my god, like this is the first time anyone has given me a hug all year. And I think we've seen videos of that where someone, I think I've seen YouTube videos of that where someone might be going nuts, and then someone does something nice, they give them a hug, and then they talk about how they're struggling. And maybe the point there is, had they talked about things before they boiled over, might not have happened. Still could happen, but maybe it would happen less. If when the problem was small, if they had someone to talk to and talked about whatever is weighing on their mind, it might have released that when it was controllable. They didn't completely lose their mind. But it's a build-up of 10 different things are happening. They're harboring all this, and it just explodes one day in an uncontrollable fit. So perhaps if it were easier, especially for men, if they could just go to someone and have a casual conversation before it gets to that boiling point, that could be avoided in 9 out of 10 cases.
I think I've got a friend, and I think this is like a good model to prescribe to have someone that you mentor and someone that you go to for mentorship, because it's like a good outward flow of you being vulnerable, and then generally if it's like you're mentoring someone, it would be someone who's probably a bit younger than you and hasn't quite had the same experiences, because like an inflow and outflow of you being open, vulnerable, and willing to change, and then you also using the things you've learned over time to share with other people. I think that that's probably a good thing that I maybe I need to consider to doing myself.
I think that's really, really good, and it's something. I don't really have either of those relationships, but there's certainly, for example, I think I've mentioned like my niece who has a very brain similar wired to me. I can be a mentor for her and hopefully guide her through some of the things that she's experiencing that I was experiencing in that age when I didn't have a mentor, and hopefully that can alter the trajectory of her life for the positive. So I think
that's great, man.
Yeah,
Maybe like a youth leader, for example. I never went to any youth groups growing up, but I know like friends who run youth groups and have done youth leadership, and sometimes for those kids, just to have someone to listen to them, because whatever they're going through at home or their life like upbringing might just be too hard. Just to have someone that they can be open is it's a good example and a good model that I think over time it just becomes easier. Like the more you practice flexing that openness muscle, open feeling muscle, you think in theory it'd be easier as time goes on.
I think I definitely agree. It's definitely not there yet, like as a society.
No.
And I think like you mentioned, the couple of the big, like the Rock and a rugby player, like that's all super helpful. And sometimes some people may think, guys especially, like I don't have anything to add, I'm not like, no one looks up to me, it doesn't matter. But just the simple fact of the more people talking about it, like a virus going viral, it just makes things a whole lot easier. So the more you talk about it, the more you can find, if that hypothetical mother screaming at her kids has other mothers constantly talking about their stresses, and they go, oh, it does diffuse it, doesn't it?
Exactly.
It feels like diffused. And so if you could do that on a big societal scale where it's super normal and everyone's just like diffusing little bits at a time instead of building up and going crazy, how much better the world might be if everyone's just letting it off straight away.
Church I go to, like generally you'd have like life groups, so you'd meet regularly with people who are kind of in the same experience or same life stage as you. So if you've dating or married, for example, it would be like couples, and they talk together and share like the vulnerable things, because often it's easy just to have like others share their examples and shortcomings and things that they find positive that help. Or if you're in like it's the same as like youth group, I guess, in a way. It's just if you're in the same boat or same environment, it just it becomes a lot easier to talk about. The stigma sort of drops. I understand it might be harder for someone who maybe would consider that they need to see a counsellor or to unpack things, but then that can be seen as difficult because it's quite clinical in a sense. But
it's so hard to like ask for professional help, especially as a man. As I say, it took me so long to get over that. Well, I had to get over it for the first time just after leaving high school when, I couldn't run away from my problems any longer because I couldn't get a job, essentially. I was shying away. In theory, I could get a job, but I couldn't at the time. It felt like I couldn't get a job, and my parents just thought that I was lazy. But it was because I had all sorts of anxiety, and so it just got to a point where I had to say that. And that's the only reason, is because it got to a point where I couldn't run away from it any further. So I had to face it then, and then go to a doctor, and then go to a counselor. And yeah, that was extremely hard because it feels like it's like conceding defeat, essentially.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. It feels like I should be able to fix this, I should be able to solve it, but the fact that I have to go and ask for professional help means that like there's something I'm faulty, there's something very wrong with me. And to be fair, I didn't really get over that at that point. I always harbored that, and I didn't tell anyone about it, and I was so embarrassed about it. I remember even saying when I got put on a sickness benefit, I remember saying to my mum, like, oh, I don't want to like have to stop drinking alcohol because I feel like guilty that I'm on a benefit and spending alcohol. Like, I was like, I don't, and she's like, you don't have to stop like drinking alcohol. But there was like this internal thing where it's like, I can't do that. I shouldn't be allowed to do that because, yeah. But yeah, anyway, I didn't really get over it at that point because I just didn't understand it all. But then obviously the big one for me was going to a psychiatrist to get diagnosed with ADHD. Took me years to sum up the courage to do that. And, you know, I finally did do it. And yeah, so it's been life-changing. And yeah, like I own it now. Like I own that, and I'm very comfortable sort of talking about all these things. And my life is only getting better. And I don't really see anyone, you know, leaving me and saying this guy's nuts for talking about all these things. No, in fact, my relationship's only getting better, and I'm only creating more relationships. So I can only speak for myself, but talking about my struggles, and that's, I never had a big meltdown, just talking about them has improved my life immeasurably. So yeah,
it's very attractive. It's like when you're vulnerable, other people are more inclined to want to be vulnerable themselves, and also it shows that you're trusting them. It's like a gift, like a trust. It's a very like gift. So if you're basically giving people gifts, everyone, the more you talk about your feelings, you're going to become closer as people because you're sending and receiving gifts of truth.
I kind of have a question, maybe just to see your guys' thoughts on this, but do you think, particularly with men, that I guess a lot of people, or is it a thing that you almost need to hit rock bottom before it's you're able to open up? So say, for example, if you're going through addiction, and take alcohol, for example, not everyone, but I think you can generally tell like when things start becoming a problem, and there might be like a desire to fix it, but just getting to that next stage and accepting help is the hard part. But it's almost like we need a rock bottom or a significant event, like I don't know. I don't want to say like drinking and driving and having an accident. That's a terrible example, but yeah, like having something that really will cultivate the change.
Yeah, I don't think that you need to hit rock bottom per se, but it generally does need to be some sort of significant event. It can also be a positive event. So you accidentally get someone pregnant in the middle of an alcohol addiction. Oh crap, got to get my shit together. It's generally positive. So it generally does have to be. I would say generally does. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it does have to be some sort of significant event. Could be a child, maybe someone close to you dies. Oh crap! Now I have to, get my act together because I have to look after the family or play a bigger role, whatever. Or it could be something. Like in my case, I couldn't get a job, and there's only so long, because I was living home with parents, and they weren't going to accept me doing that for seemingly no reason. So that wasn't necessarily rock bottom, but it was like a big event. It's like leaving high school. Now you have to get a job. No, but I can't. Yeah. So yeah, it can be rock bottom, but I don't think it has to be. It can just be, a significant event.
Yes. The way I visualized it when you said it is, this is going to be beneficial for anyone video watching. So this is rock bottom. This is like, this is rock bottom, and you're cruising here. If you're not diffusing stuff like we talked about, you're just slowly going down, and then lost my job. It goes down, and it goes back up, and you're fine. But if you're not diffusing it, it's still getting closer to rock bottom. Like you can only chronically not talk about open up and whatnot, and then it takes like a significant another event comes, like girlfriend broke up with me, or I got someone pregnant, that nearly hit rock bottom enough to trigger it. And if you can recognize it as you're going down, perfect. The higher the better. Like just keep.
Yeah,
restarting,
I mean,
but sometimes a big event will push you through rock bottom, and then
Yeah.
that'll trigger it.
so maybe like the example maybe is best for that is like, say, you're overeating, you're gaining weight. Like sometimes you know your body, and you realize, oh, I should probably lose a few pounds, or I should probably start exercising more, or eating healthy foods. But then you go to the doctor and they tell you, okay, you've got diabetes. Like, okay, now I really have to get my shit into gear, otherwise I'm going down a path of XYZ. But I think sometimes in that trajectory of downward spiral, or just things are going downhill, it's so hard to like catch yourself in that moment and to reverse it sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of like reflection, like I suppose reflection, and you also almost got to kind of separate from your life and look at your life and the trajectory it's going, and say like, am I okay with this, or is this good? Better bite it in the bud, nip it in the bud.
I would say it's a superpower the sooner that you can recognize it. So yes, some people it will end up being rock bottom. It is just they have to end up in jail. Something terrible has to go wrong. It's not that it has to happen that way. It's just that they didn't have an awareness to that's it. Stop the bleed. But
it's a good analogy.
It's a superpower if you can recognize it, and to say the sooner the better. It's something that's sort of very relevant. This can happen in trading, sports betting. When you go on tilt, you lose, and then you chase, and it ends up spirals out of control.
It's a League of Legends term as well, tilt, in the same
definition.
Right,
yeah. So the sooner that you can catch that and essentially recognize, okay, I'm in tilt, my brain, that's loss of control.
Yes.
It's a very real feeling. It's a loss of control. And get in the car, if you're that out of control, don't get in the car, but go for a walk, unplug the internet and walk away. And then after an hour, you will factory reset.
Yes.
Yeah, like athletes possibly might be an example. I've heard numerous stories of people, particularly in US sports, like getting drafted and all of a sudden becoming overnight millionaires, thinking all of a sudden here I am, you can't stop me, I'm invincible, earning so much money, and then thinking that you can get away with doing dumb things. I don't know, this is a good example, but like there's blind footballers think, I'm earning XYZ, women are gonna want to be with me more, and they start thinking like, oh, I can get away with pushing the boundaries, or then all of a sudden, you might be roofing their drinks.
Yeah.
Or something.
So the sooner that you can recognize it's very common. It's very common in trading and sports betting. Some people sort of figure out like a winning formula, and then they make 100K, and then they blow it all, and then they make 100K and they lose it all again. So it's that case is that they've got the skill essentially, but they don't have the mindset, they don't have the mentality, and so they keep going from 100 to 0, 0 to 100, and it's being able to intervene when you're at 90 and say, let's stop right here and stop it from going all the way back to 0. There's always going to be peaks and valleys in trading and in life, and it's about recognizing when you're just, when you're just going downhill, and rather than going all the way down, just gradually and then bring back up. Yeah, in all walks of life. So, like my life can easily spiral out of control. I start drinking, I start working out, I start making silly, and it's being, if you can recognize that, fast. So like a good example actually is after like last Saturday night, got absolutely drunk for the first time in 3 weeks, and it just threw me off, and I could have so easily like spiraled out of control, stopped working out, and just you got into a terrible habit. But I broke that cycle as fast as possible. I made sure I did some cardio the next day. I forced myself to do a workout on Monday, even though I felt like crap. And it's just being able to, so like Saturday was a big momentum breaker for me. It depleted my brain, body, but I was able to, minimize the fallout from that. And in times gone by, I just would have spiraled and spiraled, and I'll be going home drinking again tonight. And so it's about recognizing those natural peaks and valleys, which were always going to happen, and just being able to gradually.
I don't know, relapse is the right word. Well, it could be like relapse. It can be if it's an addiction.
I wouldn't say that I have an alcohol addiction, but I have an alcohol problem. I have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and it can easily spiral out of control. But yeah, if it's a full blown, so it would be in the case of like an alcoholic, a full blown alcoholic, if they relapse, have a drink, it's so easy for that to spiral out of control because you're like, it's all over now. I'm back to zero. But if they can just the next day awake and be like, it's only one day. I was 100 days sober before that. Now I can still build on that. It was just one day. It's not going back to zero. It's going back to 99, not to zero.
Yeah.
And just stopping that
Well
from
spoken.
Probably the mindset.
Last 5 minutes, well spoken.
Yeah, the mindset of knowing, like, as humans, inevitably it's easy for us to fail. But so long as when you do fail, like, you got to be stern and have show discipline to yourself. If you're willingly defying and you know, like, you can still go ahead and ruin, like, let's say you've got a streak of going to the gym or going for a walk every day, and then one day you don't. It's like, oh wow, I could look at it like, oh, I'm such a failure. Like, why did I knew I had to go, I just couldn't get myself to do it. But still recognizing, oh, well, okay, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. Like, I've been going for the past 3 weeks straight. Not going once isn't going to hurt, but I'm going to get back on that wagon ASAP.
Yeah. So it's a superpower if you can do that, because I don't think most people can do that, or it takes them half a life to figure that out. And I say this applies in like all areas of your life, essentially. Anything that it's just it's momentum. There's negative momentum and there's positive momentum. And just because you had one loss, to say whether that be not going to the gym, whether it be losing some money, whatever, watching porn, whatever it is that it is, it's better to just, if you can just cut the losses short, don't spiral out of control, and then to say you can just, it's like, you can go here, or you can go here. It's better to do that one where you just go back a little bit. You go back a little bit.
It's like success isn't linear.
Yeah, exactly. It's always going to be little troughs, but yeah.
I think it's real helpful for man brains, especially because they're quite what's the word, like mechanically focused, like want to know how things work. Thinking about it in that way, like when you mentioned right 10 minutes ago, you mentioned it. It's just that image and like graph almost came into my mind specifically, and like you keep like talking about troughs and valleys, and it's like very visual. I think for guys as well, it could be quite helpful to like intentionally frame your mental health like that in a way where it's like a graph, where you can see it's not zero, it's just 90%, and then it's not hard to just get back up to 100.
Yeah.
Maybe final thoughts, Tom.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, to summarize, because we did go on a little bit of a tangent, but what we've said is relevant to being open and talking about your feelings, and like recognizing even in our like infallibleness when we stuff up, or if we lose control, or just like all of a sudden close off to other people. Like, that doesn't mean that it's gone for good. Like, you can still then make a turn to like be open again and to talk about your feelings with your mates, and you don't have to like shy away. You can just keep it up. But yeah,
I've got my final thought that I've had down here for a while now is that my main point, if anyone listening is triggered and angry at me at the first half of it, I don't care for one, but two, I think my main point is that if more like in an ideal world, so you mentioned you talked about the mother losing her shit in a Kmart, and if only other mothers could feed their feelings and emotions together, then they can all relate and it diffuses. And you mentioned as well like youth groups, so like teenage niche group, there's the young mother group, you can go on as big a scale as you want. You can go to people in general, then you can go men, women, like need to talk, like more men that talk, it helps more men, more women that talk, blah, blah, blah. But so if everyone's doing it, all niches are covered, and you're bound to relate to many people across many different niches. For example, like I'm a man, so the more I talk and we talk, it helps other men, but I'm also part of the chicken owners group, a niche, and all the stresses that come with owning chickens, which is very minor, but still, you might be like, I'm at my wits end, blah, blah, blah. Talking to other chicken owners diffuses that. Likewise, other if gamers talk about their mental health, if every niche and everyone is talking
Yeah.
about their mental health, it's going to
Totally.
diffuse across like a web, and
Yeah.
it's going to be way more effective.
Like,
So that's my final
just to
point.
touch on that, yeah, like getting a dog for me, like as enjoyable as it is, when I started taking him out for walks, there was that like underlying feeling like, oh man, like if my dog misbehaves, that's a reflection on me. So if they start barking while we're walking on the street, or if you take them off their lead at like the park and they run up to someone and start jumping on them, it's like, oh my gosh, this person's gonna think I'm terrible, I can't control my dog, or yeah, that's I guess
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
okay.
But like a dog, you need to talk to other dog owners.
You need to talk to other dog
and then
owners.
it diffuses it.
Yeah.
You go, oh, this is fine. This is normal. Like,
Yeah.
and we can all share in the pain. It helps when other people can share in your
totally,
pain. Yeah. Which is, and it's a form of pain. Mental, like the hypothetical 100 dipping down to 90 is a form of pain, and then it takes effort and work, which is kind of another form of pain to get back up to 100. But
so I think kind of like why like memes, particularly like there can be some very specific memes that or reels or short form content that relates to you, but you go to the comments and you realize there's like 150, 200,000 people that have basically this exact same experience that I do. So finding your niche or finding your community, whatever it is in your walk of life, like if struggles or even your joys, like there's a bounty of community and places you can go to.
But we're all part of so many communities, like intermingled. Like like we're all lots of things, and we all have lots of hobbies. So and they're all communities. So the more if just everyone, and it takes some bravery as well. If we're going to push it forward on a big societal level, it takes the bravery of individuals to push it forward. And by definition, if you're trying to push the status of mental health chat forward, you're going to have to step kind of out and be like a bit of a loner in your niche and to pull everyone else along.
Yeah.
You have stuff to say, David?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say whether you're a man or a woman, if you're currently, struggling with something, or even if you're not struggling, you just have an urge to express yourself more than you have been, but don't feel it's possible because it's not been shown to you from others near you, do that. Especially if you're struggling, reach out to someone, talk about it, find an avenue for help. Feel free to reach out to me, Friday Council, directly if you're an old friend. And secondly, like that would lead me into like just normalizing this stuff. Especially again, I'm more for if you're like struggling with anxiety, depression, something along those lines, is normalizing it, especially as a man, because with things like that, it's very easy to go into this dark internal place where you think it's just you're faulty. I'm the only one who feels like this. Everyone else is feeling great. They've got it figured out, and it's just me. It's very easy to go into that place. Been there many times, but when you hear people out there like The Rock, Anton Leonard Brown, people who are superheroes, real life superheroes, talking about it, it's very comforting. It's a very warm feeling, realizing they're just human like me, and these things are normal, and many people experience these things, and it's, in my case anyway, it's very helpful to talk about it, and then I've been able to, find some solutions. So keep talking about it, normalize it, even if it's just within your own friend group. Start talking about this sort of stuff. It's on a small scale, but in all likelihood, your friends will, relate, and it's like a snowball.
One-on-one's easier as well if it feels awkward, if your friend group isn't privy to these kind of chats. One-on-one's good. Catch a friend out, corner them.
I almost
start talking about your feelings and freak them out.
I don't know, this might be useful to other people, but even if you don't have someone, like being vulnerable to like recording yourself or making a voice recording and listening, like as cringe as it is to hear yourself,
we know.
Yes, but when you put it to light, I think sometimes they can also just be like,
like not showing anyone, just for yourself.
Yeah, just for yourself. It's like, well, okay, like if I'm putting it out there and I'm being open, it's a good step to make, because inevitably if you do see meet people or friends or whatever that you talk to, it's a good step. Like you're flexing that muscle of practicing.
I think there's something deeply like either psychological and or like spiritual about that, because just like you can like hack like dopamine by smiling at yourself in a mirror, it's just seeing another smile. It like changes feedback. Also like the purging, even if it's just for yourself, purging, recording or writing or something. Not that I've ever really done that. It makes sense that would also change your mental state, to feel like you've diffused at least somewhat, at least to some tiny maybe extent. Yeah, just thinking it would make sense if it's analogous to the smiling at yourself in the mirror science.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's a good one to wrap up. I don't know about you guys. Any last things?
Yeah, I think
we're happy about that.
Pretty good way to.
Good.
I'm sure there's things that have been left unsaid. So there's probably a good one at some point to do a part 2.
I'd be fascinated to get a panel of, we should find 3 other girls, like parallel universe podcast girls, to talk about this stuff, to get a girl's perspective, because obviously my brain goes straight to the sexes with this, and I'd be fascinated to hear 3 girls talk about the same things, or roughly the same topics,
from their perspective of being a woman, or their perspective of what they think men go
being a woman.
Okay,
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
maybe we'll try and reach out and see if we can find something.
Yeah, we'll make an Avengers team of emotional women who are willing to talk about their emotions publicly.
No, all right. Well, we'll wrap that one up. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yep,
felt quite counselled from this episode.
Definitely.
But yeah, thanks for finding us. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, YouTube.
Shorts are coming slowly but surely.
Yep,
are coming out about once a week at the moment.
But that's episode 39 in the bag, and we will see you next time. Also, yes.
And I was going to say, okay, my one first. Appreciate that we're all trying very hard not to interrupt each other, was it? Yeah. I think we did real well this time as well. We're trying not to interrupt each other for our own personal conversations with other people outside make us better listeners, but also for people listening.
Yeah, and also thanks for those who've reached out to us with topics and ideas.
Yeah, we've had a few.
We hear you.
Amy.
Yeah.
I'm sure she wouldn't mind being well, it's only her first name anyway, but appreciate the love. I'm sure you'll appreciate this episode, I think.
Yeah.
Cool, hopefully.
Cool. Well, that's us.
Later.
Peace.
Peace.